Kaufman is alive. I look at comic books new and old. Today I'm looking at an old comic book, Shadowhawk #1 by Image Comics. This is a original created character by Jim Valentino, one of the original creators and founders of Image Comics. I'm a big fan of all the original created characters at Image. I love the shared universe that they all kind of had at the beginning. Spawn, Savage Dragon, of course, Youngblood, Wildcats, Wildstar, Gen 13. I love the shared universe that Image had at the beginning. Definitely rivaled Marvel and DC. It was so much fun at the beginning there. And then, of course, the Wildcats, the Wildstorm, all those characters went over to DC, oddly enough, which they remain today. But I love Shadowhawk. Great character design. Really cool logo. This first issue has got a cover that is drawn by Rob Liefeld, oddly enough. And Jim Valentino, I think, also did some work on this piece as well. It's kind of like a foil cover here. I love all the little ink lines here. Real sharp looking cover. It says, "Who is Shadowhawk?" if you can see that at the top there. It's kind of raised off the paper a little bit where it says, "Who is?" And the signature Valentino Liefeld is also raised off the paper a little bit there. But a classic cover. I love that it's got just the black on the back as well. $2.50 cover price when it first came out. This is August of 1992. Malibu Comics was still printing all of the Image comics at this point. And says dedicated to Jack Kirby. There's a special thanks to Rob and the gang at Extreme. That's Rob Liefeld. And Dan Fraga, Kurt Hathaway, Richard Horry, Sherry Liefeld, Morant Michaels, and Norm Ratman. We got Diane Valentino doing the lettering on this book. That must be Jim Valentino's wife. The story's called A Nightmare Walking. We get some classic Image, as I always feel like every good Image comic book should start. We're in like an alleyway here. For some reason, Shadowhawk is dressed like a homeless person, and he gets attacked by all these gang members, and he busts this dude's spine. Trying to be extreme here. Really ultra violent tone. And, you know, Jim Valentino brings that up later in the back when he has this letter to the readers here, which I'll bring up later. But a different approach for Jim Valentino. And, you know, his style is not quite as cutting edge as some of the other Image guys like Jim Lee or Eric Larson or Liefeld. And I always, you know, his style feels like it's a bit stuck in the past, where some of the other Image guys seem to be forging kind of a new comic book future. But his style seems a bit like the Marvel House style that you get at the time. So some good artwork though. I really like the backgrounds here. He does some just great cartooning in every single panel. Great perspective and setting in every page here. We get this bad guy Arson, and he's burning down all of these homes, like in the projects here. We got all these people watching on. He's kind of a interesting looking supervillain here. I like that his name has like a actual like logo when he introduces himself. But it's kind of dated for the time for some of the things that Image was going for, I feel like. There's a weird panel here where he actually does save this dog. And he says, "I wouldn't hurt no cute little pooch like you. Besides, Wanda would kill me if I did. With the emphasis on Wanda, which is kind of weird. I don't know if that's a nod to Todd McFarlane's wife, Wanda, or Spawn in general, where Wanda is a main character. I don't think it is. I really don't understand that reference, but... So the plot here in Shadowhawk is kind of like, who is Shadowhawk? Like, we don't know who he is. So we're meeting all these random characters throughout the book here. And actually reading it for the first few times, it's kind of awkward because we are meeting like all these random characters who you're supposed to, there's supposed to be a mystery about who it is, and you're supposed to try and guess at who it could be with all these characters. But you don't necessarily get that until you get to the end of the book and you get the letter from the author kind of explaining it all. So it doesn't really work too well. But I do like the fact that Shadowhawk it's kind of an unknown character, but it makes it hard to kind of relate to or get into. But it's an interesting take on a hero, like not knowing, even as the reader, who his secret identity is. But he's like the street level character of all the Image comics. You got like Spawn, he's like the mystical character, and he's like Doctor Strange almost. And you got the Wildcats, who are like the X-Men, and Youngblood, who are like the Avengers, and Savage Dragon, he's a cop. But, Shadowhawk fills a good void because he's just like the street level character. He doesn't have an affiliation to the police or any agency or anything like that. He's his own man, so... And actually, we don't find out who his secret identity is at all here in this first issue or in this entire first miniseries, the first 4 issues. We don't find out who he is at all until the second issue of the second Shadowhawk series. And we actually do find out who he is. We actually do see the guy who becomes Shadowhawk, who we find out who is Shadowhawk. So if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead a few seconds. But it's this character in this page here. We meet these 2 brothers. There's this guy, Hojo, and his brother, Paul Johnstone. And this guy here, Paul Johnstone, is Shadowhawk. We find out in issue 2 of the second Shadowhawk series that he's actually Shadowhawk. And this issue is actually not the first appearance of Shadowhawk as a character. He actually first appeared in Youngblood number 2. So if you want the first appearance of Shadowhawk, go check out Youngblood issue 2. And we get this reporter character who's trying to cover the Shadowhawk, and she's being told by her editor to get off the story. He's been told by the mayor's office to get off the story, and she says this isn't the last that she's heard of him, considering that he's threatening like her future and everything. And she says that's real low, Ted. So she's going to keep following the story. We meet this character named Vendetta Bold is her name, with 2 D's, Bold, of course, because it's an Image comic. And I guess she like works for the government or the mayor's office or the media or something, but she's the one suppressing the story, and she's the one that has hired this arson guy to burn down all of the projects, and she's going to basically reconstruct the city after he burns it all down. So she's basically like the Lex Luthor of this book. So we see Shadowhawk using like his Batarang kind of device here, or his like kind of like Moon Knight. And his character design, he kind of looks like Moon Knight. His mask obviously kind of looks like Wolverine. I always love the way that Liefeld draws the eyes on this specific piece, though. But now Shadowhawk gets into a confrontation with the cops. He brings up his armor. He's like, thank God he has his armor, but It's no match for like a shotgun. Then the reporter is going to meet with Vendetta Bold here, and kind of a weird scene. She starts like massaging the reporter here. She's like, "Well, tell me all about it." And she's like, "Well, there's this vigilante on the loose." And we see Shadowhawk here on the building side. So she's trying to massage this reporter, and we're assuming convince her to not continue to follow this story at all. So we get a cool double splash page here of Shadowhawk jumping through the city. We get some pinups here. This one's of Infinity, which is a book that I don't even know if this even came out or it only had like 1 or 2 issues, by Richard Horry. And I think Liefeld does some inks on here as well, but pretty clearly a Jean Grey knockoff. And The Others, which is another Jim Valentino book, which I think was also called The Pact at one point. I don't know if it came out as The Pact or it was The Others. I can't remember, but not ever something that ever really took off. Got all these giant speed lines in the background. Reminds me of that first issue of Savage Dragon. Must have took a while to just draw all those lines. We get an extreme ad here for Brigade and Youngblood. I don't think this Brigade cover actually was ever used. This just looks like an ad, an illustration they just used for this ad. I don't think they ever actually used it for the cover. I could be wrong. We get a Pit ad as well. This was about to come out from Image, and Wetworks as well, which I think like another year it came out, by Wills Portaccio. And then we get the first ever drawing of Shadowhawk by Jim Valentino. Now, I read something that said the original name for this character was Starhawk. And Jim Valentino, he was the artist on Guardians of the Galaxy at the time. And Tom DeFalco, the editor at Marvel, convinced him to use the name for a different character than this. And so he ended up calling this character Shadowhawk. So, and then we get the letter from Jim Valentino here. He says, "Who is Shadowhawk? Could he be the most obvious person? Lieutenant Jax, who was the cop we saw earlier. Hey, kitty." Here's my kitty Logan here. He wants to get in on the video, I think. But he says, "Who is Shadowhawk? Could he be the most obvious person, Lieutenant Jax, or the least, Hojo? Is he black or white, male or female, tall or short?" So it could also be the reporter, right? But we learn it's not even Hojo, it's Hojo's brother, so. And then he goes on to say that we're actually not even going to find out who it is in the series, which kind of does spoil it. He gives some thanks to Rob Liefeld again for the cover. He says there's a pinup too that Liefeld did, which I don't see in here. So I don't know if my copy, which I think I bought as a back issue at some point, had the pinup taken out of it already. It kind of looks like it. It's still got the Image Zero coupon, but there's no pinup unless he's just talking about the cover. So I don't know, but let me know what you guys think. Did you guys ever read Shadowhawk? I'm a big fan of these early Image comics like Shadowhawk. So let me know what you think in the comments, and please like, please subscribe if you haven't yet. If you like videos like this, check out my channel. I do post daily comic book videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one.